Hello everyone, my name is Karan and welcome back to Krita Studios. Today we are going to be talking about another one of our case mods. So the case we worked upon was NTEC NX 200. Those of you who know cars may be able to tell that this one is based on the new BMW M3 competition. It's a fairly plain Jane case. There's a solid front panel with a light strip in between, and the color of the LED light can be controlled using the button on the console. Now on the console you get two USB 2.0 ports, one USB 3.0, one for audio, and then your power and LED button. So the fans in the front are bottom biased, meaning there's no fan on the top, there's one in the middle and one at the bottom. Now the bottom one blows air partially in the case and partially under the PSU shroud, but the PSU shroud is ventilated, so most of the air eventually makes its way back into the case. You have space for 2.5 inch drives, you have space for 3.5 inch drives, but there's a problem. So if you use a longer PSU like the Corsair RM750X that I use, the caddies are going to come in the way. Once you install the cables onto the PSU, the space between the caddy and the PSU is really low, and it's simply put, it's an uncomfortably tight fit, and you won't want to do that because the PSU is really pricey and you won't want to mess it up. So it could easily take in a Noctua NHD15, and at the moment I have a 3060 Ti, but before this I had the Gaming X1080 Ti from MSI. So that is a fairly large card as well, and the CPU cooler NHD15, it's pretty big as well. So this case can take that, not with the second fan if you have a taller RAM stick, because this one also has a clearance for around, I guess, 165. So the Noctua will fit if you use low profile RAMs. So the biggest problem with this case though is airflow. With that solid front panel, you do not have a lot coming in to the case, and especially if you have high-end components. I mean, mine are relatively high-end. A Ryzen 7 3700X and a GTX 1080 Ti or a RTX 3060 Ti can contribute to over about 300 watts. So in order to drive it away, you need good airflow, which this case was lacking to some extent. But then again, it's a budget case. You cannot expect to have, you do not want to put components like that in a case like this just because you can. But this is what the point of this case mod was. So while discussing and going over different concepts and ideas for the front panel, we came across the BMW M3 competition. Now the question was how to adapt that for this. So the one good thing about BMW is that on their press site you can find all the high resolution photos of all their models. As you can see, we went with half of the M3's grille. The first step was of course to draw the grille on the front panel. Using the Dremel, we decided to cut slightly inside the line because the excess could always be filed off, and that would also give us the opportunity to clean off the debris of burnt plastic. The blades on the new M3 competition's grille are not single blades, they are sets. A thicker blade, then a thinner blade. Only the one in the middle is the single one. Now there was a lot of deliberation, and after going through a lot of materials, we finally settled on a wooden ruler and a plastic ruler. The wooden ruler would make for the thicker blade and the plastic ruler would make for the thinner blade. Before they could be installed, they had to be wrapped in black vinyl, and then they had to be arranged in a manner so that space between each blade of each set was consistent. So we used foam tape for that. Not only it helped in keeping the blades together, it also ensured consistent space because we use two layers for each set. Last time we were able to get away with the horrendous paint job that we did by calling it a post-apocalyptic theme. But this time around our mod was based on a car, and that too a BMW M3 competition. So the paint job had to be immaculate. But this time around as well, we faced the same problems, sourcing the material. Again, the most difficult thing to find was the spray primer. But after a lot of scouring and searching around, we came across Samurai Paints on Facebook. Now before you can paint the panels, you have to prepare the panels for painting, and the first step in that process is sanding. Now when you start sanding, you do not have to go too hard because the metal panels may be able to take it, but the plastic one may get scratched. And then after you are done sanding with one grit of sandpaper, you move up the grit numbers in order to make it more smoother. Then finally, once you're done sanding it, you have to wash it off in water. The first step was surfacer for metal and plastic primer for the plastic front panel. We went with a total of 3 coats, and in between each of them we had 30 minutes of gap. Once we had the surfacer coat on, it was time to do wet sanding. Now wet sanding is important because it smoothens the surface further so that the paint adheres even better. The next step was the undercoat, which we had went with silver. 3 coats, each of them really light and each of them with 30 minutes of gap. Now that we had our panels ready with the undercoat, it was time for the metallic blue one. It's the same process. You just go with light coats, you go with 3 of them, maybe 4 if you want. Our job was done in 3, and then each of the coat had 30 minutes of gap in between them. Now the job of a top coat is to seal the paint, and most of that happens on the edges. So if you spray a top coat with the masking on, in all likelihood when you remove the masking, it is going to remove the paint as well. Now once you have your masking off, you can go ahead with the top coat, and it follows the same process. 3 light coats with 30 to 40 minutes of gap in between each of them. After the top coat, we left our panels to dry for at least 24 to 48 hours. Now it was time to put our case back together. There was still some details left, like the M3 competition batch. This was simply acrylic laser cutting, and then the 3 color bands that you see, the colors of BMW M, these are all vinyl. The same thing with these 4 air intakes, we decided to line them with a carbon fiber vinyl. On the PSU as well, you may be able to see that there's M3 badging, so that was all vinyl as well. Now if you see, this is the top panel and this is the front panel of the chassis itself, and they attach via this rivet. So what I did was, I inserted this metal bracket between the panel of the top panel and the panel of the front panel, and then riveted them together like they were supposed to be, and that is how this little bracket for our third fan was fixed. See, since we've modded it, I've been using it as my daily driver, and it has traveled in a car quite a few times as well. So considering that, I'd say that it has turned out decent enough. The paint is durable, everything just came out quite alright. Now I really hope you guys liked it too. If you did, like, subscribe, share, and also I almost forgot. Bye.